And a special welcome to our students who are currently joining us from the boarding house in Zimbabwe at the moment. And of course, Mark and Laura, the founders of Makomborero. So before we get into it, I'm just going to, just a couple of points with regards to housekeeping. So this chat is being recorded for the purpose of anyone who would like to know that. But also, we are also streaming live over Facebook as well. We strongly encourage you, and please, this is an opportunity for you guys to grill us, right? Ask us any questions. We've had supporters who've been with us for years, since the beginning of the charity, but we also believe as a charity, we should hold ourselves accountable to our ongoing supporters, new and old. So please utilize the Q&A section in the Zoom chat. We'll be answering questions where we can. We'll try to respond to as many questions as we can, but those that we can't respond to, we'll definitely pick those up in the newsletter, so make sure you're signed up. I'm going to hand over very quickly to the founders, Mark and Laura, who are going to give you a nice warm welcome, and then I'll give you an overview of Makomborero. We don't want to assume that everyone who's dialed in knows who we are, what we've done. And then we're going to hear from a couple of our students, and some of them are, have been beneficiaries of some of our programs, which is absolutely brilliant. You'll hear all about that. And of course, it goes without saying, we're all facing financial challenges at the moment. Makomborero is not unique to that. And so we're going to give you an overview with regards to where we stand as a charity and what our challenges are and how we're tackling those challenges. And of course, as we go into Christmas, as per every year, we're going to give you a rundown of the Big Give, which is a global campaign which we always take part in and has been phenomenally successful over the last few years. So again, thank you to our supporters on that. And then, of course, even though you can ask questions throughout this session, I do strongly also recommend that you also have some questions for Mark and Laura, who will have a Q&A session with later on today. So Mark and Laura, I'll hand over to you.
Hi, everyone. I hope if you can't pin our screen, at least maybe hopefully you can hear us, but it'd be nice if you can see us too, although she's much better looking than me. And we're ad-libbing here because we had a nice video prepared with a dog in the background and everything. But thank you so much for coming this evening. We really, really appreciate it. And we're looking forward to it too, because it's wonderful to be able to share what we've experienced over the last year. I can tell you now, we just love the work we're doing, and I'll give Laura a chance to talk also.
Yeah, so it's great to be here this evening, and I think it's an evening we always look forward to because it's a chance to just reflect on the year. And sometimes we get so caught up in the nitty-gritty on the ground here, we often don't take time to reflect, and these evenings are really great for us. So we look forward to sharing tonight with you. Thank you to our incredible board for all their hard work and dedication tonight. So enjoy the evening.
Great. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Laura. And, you raise a really good point upon reflection. Sometimes when you're involved in something as big as this, you get caught in the weeds. And I think sometimes it's absolutely necessary to take a step back and look at what you've done and what we've done. And I have to emphasize, when I say we, I'm not talking about us, the trustees. I'm talking about the people on the ground, as well as the people in the UK. But additionally to that, when I say we and we're patting ourselves on the back and saying a job well done, this is the Makomborero community, which also includes the donors that have kept this charity going. So bear that in mind. Anytime I say we, well done us, I'm talking about us as the Makomborero community, and that includes the donors as well. So I'm just going to give a very quick whistle-stop tour of that reflection that you talked about, Laura, where with regards to who are we as a charity, as a charity, we're going on to 11 years now in 2022. And so we had our 10-year milestone last year, which we were extremely excited about. And when people ask, what is Makomborero? We started off as we just focus on our A-level program, and I'll talk about that in a minute, but we are a charity that effectively operates under under the umbrella of education. So I'll give you a very quick whistle-stop tour of the programs that you can see on your screen at the moment, and then we could take it from there. So we started off with our foundation program, which is our A-level program. And what we do is we have some of the most exceptionally talented academic students that apply to our program. And we've got two channels for them to go through their A-levels. We've got students that we house in our boarding house, our resource center in Harare. And then we've also got, and those are known as our internal students. And then we have our external students who, for those that are not part of the internal program, but we still believe we need to support and can support them. We support these students in their local schools. And these are schools that are on the outskirts of Harare. And for context, for those who aren't Zimbabwean, we're talking about high density areas, which are more deprived areas, where we've got exceptional students. Our students don't need our help academically. They are absolutely brilliant academic individuals. What we do when we select students for our A-level program is we're looking for well-rounded individuals, individuals who we know can surpass academic excellence as well as become contributing members of society. So while academics are important and essential for opening up doors and giving people that foundation that they need, we also focus on ensuring that our students are well-rounded contributing members of society, and there's no shortage of examples of how that's come through with a lot of our alumni. The next program that we've got is our university grant program. We've put about 50 students through universities in Zimbabwe. We've got about 35 students at the moment at the University of Zimbabwe, largely medical students. In fact, we have had 2 Makomborero students recently graduate from medical school in the UZ. So congratulations to you both. And small brag for us as the Makomborero community, including the donors, is, again, for context, Pararenyatwa is one of Zimbabwe's largest and well-known known hospitals. And currently, the chief pharmacist of Pararenyatwa Hospital, the youngest ever chief pharmacist at Pararenyatwa Hospital, is none other than a Makomborero alumni as well. So well done to him on that. And then, again, beyond academics, because learning doesn't stop with the grades that you get at school, we have a program called Ndeipi. And with this program, we're going beyond our students. We work with our students' families. And in an economy like ours, a very challenging economy, a regular 9-to-5 job isn't something that is readily available. We in Zimbabwe, our unemployment rate is at 95%. Yes, that is correct. In terms of 95% of our community are not in formal employment. So what do we do with that? There's what we have done is we've put about 67 families through our Ndeipi program. And through this program, we help these families identify the opportunities that are around them, identify, resources that are available to them. And, the next step after that is, okay, now that I know how to utilize the resources around me, how do I manage my finances? How do I understand my finances? So financial literacy, financial awareness as well, in a challenging economy like Zimbabwe, is quite a minefield. This could be a degree on its own. So through our Ndeipi program, Makomborero has helped 67 families, and we hope to continue on this program as well. We have another program, again, one of our community-based programs, which is called Mutsidzira. And this program is effectively a grant-giving program, again, whereby our alumni, who largely come from our more deprived communities, and with the ethos that we strongly believe in terms of, we're not a charity that believes in just take. We want to instill in our students that ethos of, I've been given, but I also want to give back. I want to grow my community, right? So where an alumni has identified opportunities that can benefit the communities they've come from. So not the city itself, but the areas from which they come from. there is an award, there is a selection process. Effectively, what happens with this is they pitch their ideas, and in front of a group of judges, a judge will select, a winner for that Mutsitsira program on an annual basis. And in fact, tonight you're going to hear from one of the students who's recently been awarded a Mutsitsira program. So again, you see that we don't stop at, you've got your A levels, you got your certificate, thank you and goodbye. We want our students to continue to not just grow as individuals, but their families to grow, their communities to grow, and therefore that knock-on effect, right? We're talking today about the legend continues. What is the legend of the Makomborero program? And so these programs fit into that as well. We have our Girl Mentorship Program. In a lot of communities, but largely in our African communities, there is the challenge of, educating our girls, where education is not free. So in a lot of cases, you have to then sometimes decide which child do I educate. And unfortunately, the girl child does seem to, to suffer the repercussions of those types of discussions. We've had 90 girls, vulnerable girls, come through our program. And these are girls who would have ordinarily had to drop out of school, but through a lot of support, mentorship, again, we're talking about financial awareness and literacy as well as various aspects of mentorship. We've had 90 girls go through our program, which is absolutely phenomenal. Now, the last one, not on this page, but you're not supposed to have a favorite, but I do have a favorite project, and it's our mobile science lab. So now imagine this, we have a mobile science lab. So you have a shipping container. Imagine a shipping container, those large Maersk shipping containers. What Makomborero has done is we've taken one of those shipping containers and converted this into a fully equipped, top of the range mobile science lab, where students are ordinarily expected to go into a science exam never having touched a Bunsen burner or having touched or used science equipment so rarely that they're not given an equal playing field when it comes to those practical science exams. Makomborero has stepped in and said, we need to plug this gap. So through this mobile science lab, and our curriculum and our teacher and the support of some of our alumni students, we have this brilliant mobile science lab that a lot of students are using on an annual basis, and they're benefiting from, a lot of these opportunities. Like I said, we've got chief pharmacists on board, we've got doctors on board. Opportunities matter. And that effectively, in a nutshell, is who we are as a charity. So I'd like to hand over to, first of all, I'd like to check with Nick, to see if we're okay with the video. I know that there were a few technical issues. If not, then we can move on to the next point in the agenda. So Nick, are we okay with Nyasha's video?
I have a solution. Let's give it a go. And could I ask the trustees to let me know if this doesn't work? So let's give it a go. And as they say in Zimbabwe, we're making a plan.
Not a problem.
Nyasha, it's a real pleasure to be able to interview you today. We are recording this in the heart of Harare, but your journey hasn't always been in Harare.
It began somewhere. I was born and raised in a small village in Boera, Manikland. My father, who was a school teacher, was a polygamist. I never managed to taste the love of a father because unfortunately my father passed on when I was 2 years, 5 months. So I was then raised by a single mom. Growing up in rural areas, we used to herd cattle and all those stuffs like plowing. I'm very good at that. My financial status was not that bright, so making it to high school was something, even I myself, I never imagined how I managed to make it to high school. So it's indeed a milestone in my life. I'm an artist, by the way. I did my first songs when I was in Form 3. It was not to raise my monetary status. It was just like a hobby. But the way people fell in love with my music was amazing. And I was so humbled by their support. ndifambe neni parwendo kusvika ndasvika mweya mutsvene chizodzika usvenurenzira ndinotsika ndakumbira chizovhika vakaipa mhiko dzavanopika mweya mutsvene chizodzika usvenurenzira ndinotsika ndakumbira chizovhika vakaipa mhiko dzavanopika manduhora dzinondigaira pasina chandovatadzira jamba nemunyama vanondishuvira. Before transitioning to A level, some of my teachers, they knew that I was good academically, but I faced a lot of challenges when it comes to paying my fees. So there's this other lady who used to work at Msokomba who introduced me to Makomborero Supporters. She even paid for my bus fare from Makomborero for the interviews. She assisted me with printing the documents and transporting the documents from Boera to Harare, because back then at the school there was no internet facilities, so she had to travel from Boera to Harare to submit the forms. It's so difficult to communicate with one person or the other due to limited network facilities. My former school head, Mr. Makish, Mr. Makish received the call from Ms. Chikore and he notified me that I've been selected. There is a certain gentleman who stay nearby my place. So the headmaster would call that guy for him to pass on the message to me.
Wow.
Yes.
So it was Mrs. Chikore calls the head calls someone else, exactly. And he walks to your house to give you the message. Exactly. That's community at work.
When I received the message, it was like I was dreaming, because you can testify that most of the applicants from Makomborero are from schools like Zengeza, Mfakos, all these schools which had a good academic record as far as their pass rate is concerned. So during the interview process, I considered myself as an underdog, because I belong to an environment which can fit in the same environment those guys are coming from.
And then you've done your A-levels, you've finished. Did you have any idea what you would do after that?
Yes, I always wanted to be an electrical engineer, because back then when I was still a young boy, I used to play with electrical appliances. Sometimes I used to repair the electrical stoves, irons, and something, and such stuff of such sort. So I was always inspired to be an electrical engineer. Well, I was so lucky when I completed my A level. I got somebody who pledged to fund for my tuition. So during the first semester, in fact during my first year, I was in the university residence. That's where I was staying. But unfortunately, at the end of my first academic year, the guy said, we are no longer we are now incapacitated to pay for accommodation. We are now paying for tuition. That's when I moved to Maxim University. Yeah.
And what's life like at the Makomborero Zimbabwe University residence?
It's quite amazing, because we come from different houses, but I can safely say Makomborero Zimbabwe University resident is more than a house. It's more than a home. It's more than a home, because we are provided with any need that we would require. So, because most of the services that we receive at the boarding house, we don't receive them back home there.
So you finish next year?
Next year, yes.
What's the future for Augustine?
I don't intend to get employed, but my quest is to start my own projects. My wish is to be an employer, not an employee. Because in engineering we are taught to be innovative. So that's my quest.
And in conversations that we've had before, you've highlighted that going back to your community business, that in your community there was a lot of help, external help from NGOs
Sure.
and things like that.
Sure.
How did that make you feel?
Most of the members of my community, they do depend on government and non-governmental grants for survival. So I took my time examining those guys who represent certain institutions who will be donating goods. I saw that these guys, they are not well off, but some of them, it seems to me like they are just sacrificing. So I just learned that in life, we don't need to be rich for us to transform the lives of those surrounding us. We don't need to be rich, but all we need is love. Because I then realized that it is love which make us share the few resources that we have. And from that experience, I developed a quest to help with the little that I have, be it by the word of mouth or materially. I then developed a quest. I think that experience is the one which led me to apply for the grant.
For the Mtsidzira grant, this is.
Sure.
So Mtsidzira grant is our grant that gives a certain amount of money to past Makomborero students.
Sure.
Who have business ideas that benefit their community.
Absolutely.
Tell us about the project that you chose to do when you won that grant.
I chose a peanut butter making project. I can say this was attributed to the fact that most of the people in my community are subsistence farmers. But unfortunately, they are facing a lot of difficulties when it comes to marketing their produce. So I just decided that if I provided the market for them to sell their produce, it would be of much benefit to them. Then in turn, the raw materials will be acquiring from, that is the peanuts, will then benefit some of the selected students, the students who are vulnerable to poverty. They are academically talented, but they lack, some of them, they can't even access stationery. So those are the students who I was targeting then. From the grant, I managed to acquire sufficient capital to initiate the process. So far, I managed to purchase stationery for the 3 students that we have.
What would you say to someone who's struggling?
I have learned that negative circumstances are not indices of the end of the road. And where we are standing right now should not determine where we will stand up tomorrow. We have to continue navigating through difficult circumstances until we reach the summit.
And to someone who is thinking of maybe giving to Makomborero?
One thing I can say is, as for me, I know words cannot fully articulate how grateful am I for the services that I got from Makomborero Zimbabwe. For us to transform this world, it begins with only one person. You, Miss Mess, helped me, then I'll help the other 2, and the chain goes like that. And even if I'm given a platform to speak 1 billion words, they cannot really express and accentuate my gratitude to our donors. I'm forever grateful to them.
Thanks, Nick. Always innovative. I don't know what we would do without Nick, by the way. We'll do a proper introduction with him later. So just a quick point on that. We do have 2 more very, very short videos that we'll be showing later on today, but all 3 videos that we show today will be shared on social media and with the supporters as well for better clarity on that point. So, and just another point as well to note that, we didn't introduce Nyasha in full, in that he was one of our external A-level students. And as you heard during his video, he was the winner of one of our Mtsidzira grants. So well done to you, Nyasha. I'd like to hand over to Jacqueline, one of the trustees here in the UK, who's going to be having a conversation with one of our former students named Shailene.
Good evening, everyone. As Tanasa said, I'm Jacqueline. To those of you I don't know, I'm one of the Makomborero trustees. So our long-term supporters know that each year at this event, we highlight stories from our alumni. And for me, one of the great joys of being involved with Makomborero is watching these talented young people on their journeys. and seeing the impact they make on their communities and those around them. And I'm delighted to say tonight that we are joined by Shailene, who has taken the Makomborero ethos of giving back and applied her talents and a great deal of persistence and energy, which you'll see very shortly, to her project, and founded her own charity in less than 18 months. So Shailene, firstly, big thank you for joining us this evening. So perhaps you can start by telling us a bit about yourself, where you're from, and how your journey with Makomborero started.
Thanks, Jacqueline. I was about to start talking with my microphone off. So hi everybody. I hope you can see me well. I'm Shailene Bajaba. I graduated from Makomborero in 2018. So I joined 2017, 2018. I was an internal student. So I was at Gateway for 2 years. And afterwards, I did take 2 years of a gap year because I just wanted to figure out what I really wanted to do in life. And I got the MasterCard scholarship, which I was endorsed by Makomborero. And right now I am in Germany. I'm at Bremen. I'm in my final year studying biochemistry and cell biology with a minor in cognitive and social psychology.
Great, thank you, Shailene. So as I mentioned earlier, Shailene has just in a short period of time founded her own charity and already executed her first programs. So she's prepared a video just to talk about her charity, the Amani Foundation. So Nick, can I hand over to you, please, to see if we can show that video?
Sure thing, if you kill your video.
What happens after your prison sentence is done? When you put on those 10-year-old clothes, when you pack your little belongings and hand down torn out shoes, food, and underwear. What happens when you finally get your freedom back? At Amani Foundation Trust, we are here for this life outside of the prison walls. 90% of inmates finish their prison sentence, and at least 50% of them reoffend within a year. What we are lacking is a long-term rehabilitation program that is morally ingrained in inmates. Our prison bootcamp mentally prepares inmates to join society, ask for forgiveness, and cope with the inevitable stigmatization. Inmates get classes in anger management, healthy communication, anxiety, and depression. The post-prison program offers ex-inmates long-term counseling and employment. Our mission is to have them successfully reintegrate into society, take care of their dependents, and live a full, non-criminal life.
Ma-toilet cleaners, nema-earrings, chakadzidziswa zvekare pamusoro pema-communication skills. Takadzidziswa kuti kana uri mubusiness, kana uri musociety, unotaura vanhu.
nezvayakatidzidzisa tichibuda muno taa vanhu vakunoziva zvavanoita taane pekutanga tendawo zvakare madzishedu akatitenda kuti tinge tinewo programu yakadai.
I therefore would like to appeal to the community and families of those behind bars to care and receive them back home upon the expiry of their sentences.
Amani Foundation Trust is more than my passion. It is my purpose. It is my purpose to spread hope.
And we're back. So Shailene, I for one am so impressed at how much you've managed to achieve with Amani in so little time. And I'm sure our supporters tonight are equally impressed. So please tell us, how did you design the program that the prisoners follow?
I think for me, it's mostly about research, really. When I was in in Makomborero, I think I got a little bit of Mrs. A's empathy rubbed on me. And when I come into the prison system, I bring a lot of empathy with me and trying to understand these people before we know that they have a criminal record, but before we get to look at their criminal record, we have to try to empathize with the situation that they're in and they're going to face after they leave prison. So for me, it comes with both the empathy that I have for them and also a lot more research on existing prison reform systems. In that way, I get to design the prison workshops.
Okay, and perhaps Shailene, just elaborate a bit on what you actually do with the prisoners, because one of the key components of that is long-term employment.
Yes, so we work with them in 2 phases. The first phase is when they're still in prison and we teach them employment skills, communication skills. We offer them one-on-one counseling as well. And then once they leave prison, we work with them for an extended period of time. So from 3 months in prison and then 1 year after prison. And when they leave, we have an employment scheme with them where they make dishwashing liquid, for example, they make crocheted blankets. And this way they can get to have a sort of income, a stable source of income that really mitigates financially driven crimes.
That's great. Now, Shailene, prisons are notoriously difficult places to work. So please share with everyone tonight why you chose one of the hardest areas to work in.
I would say, first of all, I wanted to look for a place where I felt alive. I know this sounds very odd for people, but when I am in prison, for example, I feel like I am meant to be there. And I think it also comes from, I had family members who were incarcerated for different extents of times. And when I got to see them back, I realized the drastic changes that would be there, most of them negative. And I wanted to figure out, first of all, what actually is happening inside the prison walls, and how can we make sure that when they go into prison, people are actually getting rehabilitated. So that was the main thing that made me actually enter prison. But also, I worked in an actuarial company that was working in close proximity to a prison. So I think I was always drawn to the environment way before I started working in there.
Great. So now everybody, Shailene told me the story when we first spoke. So, and it really stuck with me. I think it's an absolutely wonderful example of her tenacity and problem-solving skills. So Shailene, you know what I'm talking about. Please, can you share how you managed to get approval to work in Zimbabwe's prisons?
So I knew that it was going to be hard. I had been told by people in NGOs that there was no way that I was going to be allowed to work in prison unless I was working under another NGO that already worked in prison. But I wanted to create something unique, and a unique program that I didn't find anywhere else. So what I did first is, as this new generation, I went on Facebook, and I had done my Google search, so I figured out who was the head of prisons. So I went on Facebook and I just found somebody with a similar name. And then I had to ask a coach of mine, Coach Derek, and I was like, I know this lady, can you connect me? So she's about 3 years younger than me. And we just connected on a teen level, and we started talking. And then I said, okay, but you know what? Can you talk to your grandfather for me? Because this is what I want to do. So the grandfather is the Commissioner General for Zimbabwean prisons. And I then got to have his WhatsApp number. And then I just sent him a short text message, and he had remembered me from having a conversation with his granddaughter. And then he's like, sure, let me just have a call with you. And then we just jumped on a call. It was really exactly like that easy for me. And once I had gotten the seat in the highest office, I think it was easy for me to get access into the prison system. So yeah, I think I'm a true example of networking on social media.
Yeah, wonderful, Shailene, thank you. I mean, I think everyone listening tonight, if that's not an example of how to get things done, I don't know what is. So go straight to the top.
Yes.
Right, so you're a female-run organization. So talk to us about your trustee board and how that came about, and the challenges that you will face working in Zimbabwe.
So like I said, we are an all female. So it's 3 females, all Makomborero alumni, by the way. And it's how we met. We met through Makomborero first. So Isuba was in the same year as I am, and Ufaro was 2 years before I was. So Ufaro is the older one. And when we just connected, I think there is, as much as we are different in the Makomborero cohort, there is something within us that's kind of the same, that bonds us together. So we kind of found we all were passionate about people, especially marginalized societies, and we bonded on that. And then I asked them if they could help me start this organization and sit on the trustee board. The problems are that we are normally overlooked, not only because of our age, but because we are all female. So we're normally not believed to be able to run anything properly, to put in the same hours as men would put. And I think we have really had to kind of defy the odds. For example, I have so many people writing me and saying, "Good morning, Mr. Bajaba." And I say, "You really saw my name is Shailene and you still think I'm male." But I think it's always, we always have to try to prove ourselves before we can actually get anything done, to prove that we can do it, even if we're female. So it's hard in a patriarchal nation to get us respected, for example. Yeah.
No, I think very tough, but at the same time, Shailene, I know some of the people that you work with in prisons are female, so I think that must also be very exciting for them to see, you all come in, as examples of strong women. So your first 2 programs, which you've run, have been very successful. So please, can you talk us through those, and then talk to us about how you plan to monitor the longer term impacts of the success of your programs?
So the prison boot camps, we measure success in quite different ways. The first one is, since they have one-on-one counseling twice a month, being able to attend 6 months in a row for us is successful, because we come from a nation where mental health is not hugely talked about, and people try to not go talk about their problems. And having ex-inmates attend those sessions for 6 months in a row is success for us. The second thing is having them not reoffend within the year that we work with them is also success for us, because we understand the pressures once you join society again, that could actually make you even feel more isolated, and you can't get much help from other people, which causes a risk for people to commit another crime. So not being able to reoffend within that year that we work with the person is success for us. The third thing that is success for us is being able to fend for their own families. Since they are employed, we expect that they also are able to prioritize how they will use the money and how to send their dependents to school. So that has been things that we have been able to hit those marks. We have 100% success rates so far. We worked with 15 inmates the first time around and 20 inmates the second year, and they have all not reoffended, and they are all working. And I think so far we have had a good track record. How we are wanting to expand is not, I think this is one thing I admire about Makomborero. It keeps an individualistic approach. By having fewer students, I think keeps the quality of the work in there. And then, because we don't want the inmates to become a statistic, like they are being treated in prison. So we want to have still that individualistic approach, having everybody know that we hear them and we care about them. So when we do expand, it's not about having more inmates per time, but it's having the same number of inmates, but more programs per time, so that we still are able to manage the quality of our work, despite having more people on board.
Amazing, Shailene. Well, I think, 35 success stories in 18 months is a pretty impressive track record so far. So well done. So we've talked a little bit about your long-term vision for Amani, but, what's the plan going from here?
We are working on quite a lot of things. For example, we're working on the halfway home, which is a place that we've discovered that when people leave prison, just plunging them into society is overwhelming for them. And sometimes we're trying to build a house where they can live for 3 months as we reconnect them with their families, because most of them haven't been visited in prison for the 10 years that they've served. Some of them committed crimes against family members, and having to reconnect with them before we actually send them off into society is one of the things we're actually looking at. So we are developing our halfway home a little bit outside of our area at the moment. So that's kind of like the trajectory we are moving in at the moment.
That's great. So now you're a full-time student studying quite an intense degree. So how do you balance, your studies and all that comes with running a charity?
Yeah, it feels like 2 full-time jobs to me.
Yeah.
I really can never, I think there's no secret formula to it. Everybody keeps asking, how do you get all these things done? There's no secret formula to it. I think I just have been able to compartmentalize my life, and having been able to say, this is my time to work and this is my time to study, and really going to the nitty-gritties of like literal hours that I spend on certain things has been able to make me be able to balance the two things. And I have really kind of separated my life, tried to put boundaries on certain things, because it's so easy for you to pour everything and not have time for yourself or your studies. So I have put in really good measures where I say, at this moment in time, at this hour, I will not be able to respond to these things because I need to do something else. So I think for me, it's going literally to the nitty-gritties of hours that I spend on something, the times that I'm available and the times that I'm not available to offer my services. So I think that's what has kept me going. But I'm almost done with my degree and I'm hopefully going into Amani full time. Yeah.
Well, Shailene, what's interesting is, practicing what you preach with mental health, and I think kind of, having the ability to switch off is so important. So well done. So what do you think your biggest challenges, other than getting into prisons, which doesn't sound like it was a huge challenge for you, but what have been your biggest challenges in getting everything up and running?
Remotely managing the foundation has been really hard. I think it always comes with trying to trust somebody to carry your baby. And that's how I always see it. I say when I need to trust somebody to carry a money for me, even when I'm not available, I need to be able to have that team that can go through. I can give a task to and just relax and know that it's done. And I think that has been more of my personal challenge, knowing that I'm not there and I can never really see most of the things physically, but I just have to always check in and figure out that they're happening. And I think that's always makes me want to go back to Zimbabwe now and again, because I want to make sure that everything is running well, because we're relatively new. Like you said, we're 18 months old. So it's a lot of work. So I think that has been mostly of my personal challenge. But the global challenges that I think most of the people are facing is funding. We always have to look for money, and our cause is not socially, people don't see it as socially desirable. So we always do face a lot of backlash from fundraisings and everything. But I think it's part of the job for me. At least I knew when I signed up for this, I knew that I was going into a sector where people don't really want to address it. So yeah.
And I think, sometimes the most important things to fund and are often the most difficult. I think what you're doing has huge potential to impact, the communities that you come from and that you live in. But I agree, it's not an easy thing for people to fund. So, right. So I think going to slowly start to wrap up, Shailene. So the last question I had for you was, we believe that one of the ways Makomborero differentiates itself from other scholarship programs is, the family and life skill support from Mr. and Mrs. A. So how has this support impacted you, and how do you use these skills today?
I think, first of all, I think it's just how close-knit we are. It's like we are in the same group, and we know each other, and just kind of utilizing everybody's strength in the team. If I need help with anything in the foundation, I can really just ask somebody, an alumni or a current student. And I think that that's what we have built this family in Makomborero, that we can just ask each other for help without having to look anywhere else. And how I also use the skills today is I try to replicate the Makomborero like I try to find ways to replicate it into my own foundation, kind of like all the bits and pieces we got from SMSA, all the boarding house strategies. And that's what I'm really trying to even replicate in the halfway home. So it's always, I think you get these things instilled in you, and it really just changes the way you see things. So some of the things that I do, I really don't think I would have done if I wasn't part of Makomborero at all. So I feel like it does change the way you even see the world, how you feel about certain situations, how you advocate for certain things. So for example, for me, I think it changes you in ways that you really can't see yourself surviving if you hadn't been like that. So yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. So Charlene, thank you so much for your time this evening. We are absolutely thrilled that you could be with us, and I think so incredibly proud to see the impact that you're having, and we wish you and the team at Amani, all the success for the future. And if anyone's listening tonight and would like to support Amani, please go to their webpage for more information, or else please get in touch with us, and we're more than happy to make introductions. So shameless plug there for you, Charlene. So all right, and thank you very much, and I'll back to Tanatsa.
Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you, Shailene. Do you know what? Listening to that, it serves as a reminder to the proverbial we that I mentioned at the start, as in we the supporters, we the founders, and we the supporters of and the trustees of Makomborero, of why we do this, right? There's a lot of pull on our time, resources, and effort, but then you listen to a story like Shailene and you're just like, I will give my time, effort, and everything else that's needed for, to support a charity like this. Shailene, you are the epitome of this legacy of Makomborero that we're talking about. So just a quick reminder, if anyone has any questions during any of these sessions, please send them through the Q&A section, and we'll try answer them during the sessions. If not, we'll answer them at the end. Following on from that, I would like to, Shailene actually touched on it on her point as well, but I'd like to hand over to one of our UK trustees, Simba, who will be giving you a little bit of an overview with regards to the challenges we have faced over the last year or so.
Thank you, Tanatsa, and good evening, everyone. Just to say, what a story by Shailene, really quite encouraging, and reminds us why we do what we do in the we, as Tanatsa has expressed. So we thought it would be appropriate to also share that Makomborero, like other charities, just as Shailene was saying, households and businesses, is not spared by some of the macroeconomic headwinds prevalent across the globe at the moment. And we just thought in this section, we would share very briefly, first from a UK perspective at a very high level. Then I would invite Laura as well to share the financial challenges from a Zimbabwean perspective, again at a high level. So three things sort of stand out from a UK perspective, even though there's a link with the first one. So number one, inflation in Zimbabwe, and number two, universal macroeconomic trends, and number three, the weakening pound. And I'll take each of these in turn. In terms of inflation in Zimbabwe, there is an inherent and sort of persistent inflationary environment in Zimbabwe, which means price increases of basic commodities just makes for a challenging and difficult operating environment in terms of delivering the benefit that Makomborero delivers. And the global inflationary conditions we're seeing and threats of recession then compounds to those inflationary conditions that have now, are frankly now universal. Pockets are squeezed, so there's an increase to the cost of living and to the cost of giving, which results in the squeeze that we are seeing. And then the third point is that those first 2 points, inflation in Zimbabwe, global inflationary environment, have been exacerbated by a weakening pound, which means the money has to work harder at a time where there's a multitude of other challenges societally in the society when you think about the energy crisis and so on. So people are having to make decisions around that, and that has not spared us. All this culminates into the charity needing about 50% more this year to deliver. And this is a tough place to be, faced with these challenges. There's then a risk of scaling back on some projects. And when you hear of initiatives like the Mutsitsira that we're hearing of earlier in the video, and the EP, the Mobile Science Lab, it's quite difficult. What do you draw back from, and how do you make that decision that affects the impact and the value of the delivery you will be making? So from that, and to get a real flavor, if I would invite Laura to then share kind of the actual impact of some of this from the flow through from the UK challenges, and also to expand on those Zimbabwe challenges that I was sharing. Over to you, Laura.
Hi, Simba, and it's Mark and Laura.
Yeah.
And firstly, I want to say what amazing stories of Nyasha and Charlene. We were so blown away. We were struggling to not cry, actually, most of the way through it. And certainly, I look forward to one day voting for Charlene as the first woman president of Zimbabwe. Cool. I think if I can just give you those that are attending tonight, just a few examples of how some of the costs on the ground have sort of just changed over the last year. And in particular, what's happened is we had hyperinflation in the local currency sort of around 2017, 2018. And then we slowly but surely moved across to a US dollar economy. What happened in that process is the value of the goods and the services we were buying was undervalued in US dollar terms, but they suddenly caught up this year. They suddenly ramped up their prices, particularly as we sort of became closer to a US dollar economy. And just a few quick examples. Exam fees were $15 per subject. They've gone up to $49 per subject. So it's more than tripled. Government school fees went from $50 per term to $150 per term. So again, tripled. Transport has increased, and I think that's largely driven by fuel prices, from $2 to $3 a day to $5 or $6 per day. So doubled, really. Our groceries bill doubled. Our university fees went up by a factor of 700%. And that really caught us out recently, and it was, put us under a lot of stress. And as Simba correctly pointed out, the change in value of the pound to the US dollar had that multiplying effect, particularly on Makomborero's activities. And Laura will just talk about how, because we didn't want to panic and stuff, we decided let's be proactive. Let's think how we can actually keep going even through the tough.
So I think as a couple, we've become quite accustomed to pivoting. And I think this was a pivot moment again this year for Makomborero. There've been quite a few. And so what we've done to mitigate is we will be scaling back in 2023 and hoping to recover financially and have a bit more of a buffer again. And what that means is that we have a commitment, a long-term commitment to our current students. And that commitment is between 5 to 8 years, depending on what university program they enter locally. So it's seeing them through their A-level and their university. So our what we want to value is being able to say we can guarantee that we can take this student that we're taking in sixth form and see them right through to the end. So obviously saying that, it means that we will be cutting back next year for 2023, our intake, which we currently are recruiting. This weekend, we're working with 200 students at the beginning of our recruiting process, which lasts for the whole month of end of November right through to just before Christmas. So it's a month-long process to get our students, but we will be significantly dropping our intake for next year. We've also had to really scale back on how we feed our students within our boarding houses, and we have changed our complete way of shopping. We go to local markets, we buy direct from farmers, we engage with local grassroots people for our food, and we've managed to save a lot. We've also done a lot within our two houses that we run, our university house and our boarding house, in energy saving measures, where we can cut costs in whatever area possible. We've been very honest and open with our students, so we haven't hidden any of this from them. They're totally on board and supportive of us. One of the areas that I think we've been really proud of is Mark implemented a tablet program at the beginning during COVID as a mitigation for our external students who are missing so much school. And that's been a phenomenal resource for our students. They're able to fully access all curriculum, all of their A-level subjects and videos, teaching everything on a tablet that doesn't need internet access. And we will have to scale back on that going into this next year. We've also done a massive local push with local companies. It's been exhausting. I think sometimes in Zim, living with 17, 18-hour power cuts a day and all the other things that we deal with, to then have to like navigate fundraising and stuff has felt quite exhausting. But this year we've pushed really, really hard. We've managed to secure full mental health funding for our mental health program going into this year. And that was something that we were going to have to drop, that we didn't want to drop. And that will be a cost that Makomborero will not have to cover next year, which is phenomenal. We have managed to secure part of our fees for our university students. We have 33 university students in 3 local universities. So we've managed to part secure. We're looking for further funding for that, and that's ongoing. And we have lots of individual regular donors within Zimbabwe that have really stepped up over this year. We've also had some incredibly faithful local companies that have supported us for the last 12 years, who have slowly increased their support. So as hard as it's been, we've also seen an incredible generosity from local donors in Zimbabwe. I think that's all from us.
Mrs. A for Vice President, by the way.
Thank you very much, both. Tanasa, I think we move on to you, but before we move back to Tanasa, if there's any questions in respect to what I've shared or what Laura and Mark have detailed, please again put in the Q&A. We'll be happy to attend to at the session later or after the event. Thank you. Back over to you, Tanasa.
Thank you. And thanks, Mark and Laura. That wasn't easy to hear, but I think it's the reality of, the world we're operating in at the moment. And, full transparency with regards to our students as well as our supporters is always helpful, so that, everyone knows exactly where we are and what's our plan. Because, as a board, both on the Zim side and the UK side, we're constantly thinking, we're constantly strategizing in terms of what can we do. Shailene mentioned it being pretty much like a second job, and likewise for us. And so, like I said, it wasn't easy to hear, but I think it was necessary to hear. So thank you, Mark and Laura, for that. I'll hand over to Nicola, who's one of our trustees from the UK as well, who's going to give you an overview of the upcoming Big Give.
Thanks, Tanasa. So as Tanatsa mentioned at the beginning, our annual Big Give campaign starts next week on Tuesday. It runs from 12 o'clock noon on Tuesday, the 29th of November for a full 7 days. So that means until midday on the 6th of December. We have a really stretched target this year. We are trying to raise £4,000 or more. And all of that, 100% of that 4,000, the first £4,000 that we get will be matched. This money is to support the general Makomborero program. And then as trustees and Mark and Laura, we will decide where best to use the funds that we get. So I just want to say a huge big thank you to all of our supporters around the world who have increased their donations this year. And, you know, please help us to spread the word on social media to your friends and colleagues. And if you can donate at all, please do consider donating, particularly during this matched funding campaign, which, as I say, runs from next week, the 29th of November, for 7 days till the 6th of December. We'll be sharing more details on social media, so please do watch this space and keeping you up to date with how we are doing in terms of achieving our goals. So that's all that I wanted to say there. We've now moving over to our Q&A session. So if anybody has any questions about anything that you've heard this evening for any of the trustees or for Shailene, Mark and Laura, please do just type your answers now in the Q&A and we will get somebody to answer them for you.
Thank you, Nicola. And in the meantime, whilst people are either typing away or thinking of what questions they might have, we will just pivot or turn to switch gears a little bit and have a lounge moment, asking questions. I'll ask a few questions to Mark and Laura. And, you know, having heard from Shailene earlier, it feels like my first question is like a moot point, but it'd be good to hear from you outside what we already know. Sort of in the last 12 years, what tangible ways have the students given back to Makomborero and to society? Kind of any examples of things and ways that you can see how they've been giving back?
I think Mark and I have always been very passionate about instilling in the students the ability to give back, irrespective of how much they have. And that Mark always says, you have one thing that all of us have one thing that we've been given for free, and it's our minds. And however we use that, it's for free. And so we actually don't need money to be able to impact people's lives and bring change to communities, bring hope. And I think that's something we push for the 2 years that our students are with us. And we see the fruit of that as a result. And I think one of the most humbling things has been over the last kind of few years, seeing students tangibly give back to Makomborero. So that whether it's in food, we often have chickens arriving at the boarding house and there'll be a little message from a student on WhatsApp saying, I've just delivered 20 chickens for the boarding house for the next few weeks, or I'm in Harare, I've dropped off some vegetables for the house. So we've seen a lot of tangible food giving. We've seen students giving back financially, but we've also seen how it's given us an opportunity to, sorry, I've just lost my train of thought. Let me start again. So we've seen students give back in many ways. And one of the ways that I've loved is how our university grant scheme was set up as a grant scheme that students would give back to. So anyone who benefited from the grant scheme, they would eventually, once in employment, start giving back in their grant scheme. And this year is the first year that we've really been able to say, oh my goodness, your contribution to your giving back to your university grant scheme has just paid an installment into our university fees. And that's been a really exciting thing to see. We've also seen students giving monthly small little bits out of their income, very humbling, but also just coming and spending time with current students. Even the mentor program that the alumni have set up where they're mentoring students within the house is incredible. So, and then I could go on with all the stuff that all of them, various kids are doing within their community. So it kind of feels like I couldn't pin down on one specific thing, and it feels like it's a real culture that's beginning to grow within Makomborero.
Sounds amazing. Yeah, one of my own favorite way that I've observed students giving back is the couple of times I've visited the boarding house, how you have gap year students as well. So thinking, even whilst I'm waiting for my own news, what else can I do? And that was quite heartening to see. And next question is around how has Makomborero ensured the students' mental health? We touched on mental health again earlier. Mental health and well-being remains at the forefront as part of the benefit Makomborero is delivering.
Mental health, I think, has become more and more important to us as we've understood it. I think when we first started Makomborero, it was something that was part of what we did, but I don't think we really knew how to address things. And I don't think we really knew what an impact mental health has. I think reaching our 40s, has really changed our perspective of mental health, and realizing that there was probably a lot of stuff that we should have addressed in our early 20s that we had to address later on in life. And I think particularly for our students who've really had to fight for their futures, some of them experience very traumatic backgrounds, it's giving them tools to equip them for those moments in life where it feels overwhelming and they encounter great stress. So we've been running a program for the last 2 years. This is our 3rd year now. And going into next year, we will be running a new program, which is being completely funded locally for us. And it's called Singing with Lions. And it's just an incredible toolbox to ground our students with. We feel so privileged that we get to give them those tools.
Excellent. And a short while ago, we're talking about the financial challenges, but apart from sort of the financial challenges in that operating environment, what would you consider to have been the biggest challenge in the last year, and how was it overcome, or how is it being overcome?
Do you want me to do this? Go. Okay. So getting everything back up and running again has been really tough after COVID. We came out of our last lockdown in April this year, and the term 2 and 3, our academic year is very different to the UK. We run from January to December. So our 2nd and 3rd term has felt brutal. And not because schools have changed, but because we've changed. 2 and a bit years of things not running normally, it has felt full tilt. Our public transport system has completely collapsed during that time. And there is a severe shortage of public transport. So often where our students used to rely on public transport at the weekends and stuff, we've really had to change how we transport our students around. It's cost us a lot more, and B, it's been extremely stressful on time. And then just building our team again as staff, building back the culture within our boarding house that we valued so much. And I think that's probably the saddest thing, is seeing how much that culture has changed and how much we've had to work to get that culture back this year, just because of the ramifications of COVID. So it feels like it undid a lot of relational stuff that we're having to build and put in place. Yeah.
No, excellent. And I just observe and even go back to maybe when you were talking about how as a couple you're used to pivoting and changing. We can see that it's quite visible that you work well as a team. But how are you both managing? I mean, with those challenges, and during pandemic, post-pandemic, everything seems to be coming relentlessly your way. How have you coped with those local challenges?
I think quite well. I think just living in Zimbabwe, even we tend to make a plan. I think if you don't mind me, maybe just talking a bit more about COVID very quickly, because and I think it's a global thing, and maybe those involved in education might relate to this a little bit. As we found, even within our schools, even our private schools, or independent schools, if you want to call it that, we found kids have come back from lockdowns and that, and their behavior has been a real challenge, and they've become less tolerant of each other, and we've seen that just within our wider schools, and then we've had the same effect even with our Makomborero students. The added impact with our Makomborero students is, particularly the ones we're recruiting, they're coming from a system where they've had literally 2 years of no school. And some of them had to fend for themselves by reading textbooks where they could and stuff like that. But many of them have had no schooling for 2 years. And so we've got this situation where we're recruiting students with, they've missed 2 years of schooling. They've had all the social challenges that come with the COVID. And it's been a real challenge. We've brought them into the boarding house, and we're having to relearn how to create a family again, and we're getting there, we believe, but it's been tough, but we've got through it.
Yeah. And do you find that in that relearning, you can see clearly how perhaps it's almost like an opportunity to say you're bringing in learnings from before and being able to do it in a way that you think, oh, actually now experience is working, I'm a bit wiser in approaching this, or it's completely new challenges as you see them.
And I think that's always what Mark and I have said at the end of every year. We want past students to say Makomborero is better now than it was when I was a student. If it ever gets to the point that a past student says, oh, it was way better when I was a student, then we know we've missed it. And every year we sit down and say, how can we do our recruiting better? How can we look after our staff better? How can we mitigate here better? Everything is about how we might not increase in numbers, but it's all about improving the quality of the service that we give.
Amazing. And just the last couple of questions. So looking back at the same period, the last year, what has been the most impactful or proudest moment, would you say? I guess it could be a different one from each of you, or a joint one.
Well, I can think of two things. One would be the fact that we, even during lockdowns, we actually managed to run a recruitment process. And we just by hook or by crook managed to find amazing students. Even the fact that they'd lost out on so much education, we successfully managed to find incredible students who have done us so proud in the schools that they've been learning in. And they've actually, their results have been just outstanding, and their achievements up beyond their academics have been outstanding, and wonderful ambassadors for Makomborero. And I think also during COVID, it forced us into a situation where we all created these online resources, and realizing we can actually take these online resources, put them on a tablet, and make them available to students that don't have access to schooling. And I think that's been very successful, and we've had lots of positive feedback to say how useful these tablets have been with all the resources we managed to put on out there for them. So I think those are the two things that stick in my mind the most.
I just want to jump in here because we had a question from Hugh asking for a little bit more details about the cutting back, and that the tablets is one of those, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
And so what exactly does that cutting back on tablets mean for our students?
So it means we will be recruiting less external students next year. And we feel that is an area that we can cut back on and hopefully supply other resources to support them in their education. We don't feel it's vital because they still achieve great things academically, but it does take a stress off the student. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Excellent, and thanks for that, Nicola. Thank you. Laura, did you have a proud moment, or?
I think Mark's covered them. I think I just can't believe we survived COVID. We had COVID in our boarding house. We had unbelievable sick kids. We faced, loss and death. I mean, it was, within the families of Makomborero. So it was a brutal 3 years. The last 3 years have felt like they pummeled us, but we've come through, and I'm really proud of that. Like, all of our staff are still smiling. We're still smiling and standing. We've learned incredible lessons through the process. I think we've changed people, but I'd say we're better for it. A bit broken at times, but better for it.
Wow. Yeah, and to round up, maybe before we leave tonight, what is the one thing you would want the audience to leave with? I guess it would be good, definitely, for this one to have one from each of you. What is the one thing that you think?
I think mine is that seeds of hope. Don't give up sowing seeds of hope, because you often don't see the fruition of those seeds until years down the road. And I think that's the biggest lesson Mark and I have learned through Makomborero, is that we do a lot of sowing, and we don't often see the fruit fully. We might see them academically, but, and then to see these kids years later, you realize that there's always hope. And it's not just about education, though education is key in this. We're building well-rounded people who are bringing change and hope to other people. And don't ever underestimate hope.
I really like that, because, we're talking about how in that journey, it is a journey, everything doesn't happen instantly. We take this time, this time of the year to look back. So whilst it takes years, but that yearly look back, it gets us to points like this and reflect. And Mark?
Yeah, hard to top that one. And I'm not trying to. I think Shailene said it, and sometimes it gets echoed in other ways. As I think when we started Makomborero, we really believed we wanted to be. I'm not very good at this. We wanted to be a family, and that's why we probably focus on a few kids' lives that we can really impact. We love seeing our own children, going to the boarding house and playing games and swimming and doing, all those kind of things. And we really wanted it to be a family. And if we can impact a few kids, our hope is that one day, oh goodness, I'm sorry. We're hoping that one day that they'll be the future leaders that will impact the whole nation. Mm. And that's what I suppose we really believe in.
Mm. It's that drip effect, if all of us did our little drip, it makes a big difference. So our little drip hopefully will make a big difference one day.
I don't know how to move from that. Mark, Laura, really proud of the work you're doing. I know, but we're proud, as Tanata said, proud of the community, but proud of the way you're leading it, how you're defining it, and inspiring a generation. So thank you very much for all that you're doing. And I'll pass back over to, I think we're now inviting our one of our trustees, our chairman, to come through. Tunde, over to you.
No, first of all, thanks Mark and Laura, and oh goodness, you know, with everything you've said, I think you can take a step back, and you're talking about the drip effect and the like, but we do have this legacy, and we're seeing it in Shailene, we're seeing it in Yasha, and we're seeing it in a multitude of students as well. So anyone who hasn't attended any of our previous evenings and who is not signed up to our newsletter, please sign up, because today was just a taster. If we wanted to talk about every success story that Makomborero has, we would be here till midnight. So Mark and Laura, be proud. You know, it's step by step, bit by bit, but that legacy is growing and it's impacting a lot more than just our students. So thank you for that as well. And then we'll hand over to Tunde, who's going to give a vote of thanks before we close off the evening.
Wow, what a night. I mean, but my job is the easy part, and that's really just to thank you for being part of this evening. But right now, I feel like the waiter who just has to take your bill after you've had a very fantastic meal. Well, Makomborero has been a great part of my life for over a decade now, and the passion plus the resilience has never ceased to impress me. I mean, I've been through a number of November events, but each time I'm blown away as if I'm a fresh supporter. Whether it's navigating tough economic or political climates, or demonstrating resilience through COVID, or surviving the current cost of living crisis, I've been buoyed by this consistent support of people like you. It's your commitment to the cause that's ensured the vision of Makomborero continues to bless Zimbabwe's youth and break the barriers that would have prevented the testimonies you have heard tonight from being realized. And the exciting thing is that we're not done yet. Thanks to people like you who are staying the course, we believe we'll continue to make an impact and change the lives of many beneficiaries so that they too can generate stories like Shailene's in future. So once again, my job's the easy part. All I have to say is thank you. And hopefully we'll see you again next year. Thanks, bye.
Great, thank you all, and have a good evening, and thanks again for joining us tonight. And we'll say see you next year, but we've got a lot lined up for the next 12 months as well. So Nick, if there's nothing else, I think we can close.
We've got a couple of the final two videos to share. So let me share those, and thank you to everybody who's participated this evening. Apologies of the slight challenges on the video, but we made a plan. So I'll just hand over to two final videos from our the alumni and the students at the Resource Centre. Song to say goodbye for this year, and this recording should be available on YouTube in the next few days. And do keep your eyes open for the newsletter where Nicola will share all the details of the big give and any further information that you might require. So thank you for this evening, thank you for your support, and here's to smashing that £4,000 target for the big give.
Pano